Serious, what are some of the creepiest declassified documents made available to the public? There was a declassified Soviet program where the military tried to use rabbits to psychically communicate between submarines. It was based on the premise that a mother rabbit reacts strongly when one of its offspring is killed violently, even if the mother rabbit is miles or hundreds of miles away. The program involved keeping the mother rabbits at a land-based station and killing the baby rabbits in the submarine. Message content was determined by the frequency and the strength of the reaction from the mother rabbit, which was supposedly dependent on the violence of the death. The documents were declassified a while ago, but only translated in 2016. Thebleckvault.com. Not sure if this has been mentioned or not. I'm not scrolling through a million replies. The site is run by a guy named John Greenwald. Thebleckvault / started putting in FOIA requests when he was 15 and never stopped. Currently has what is arguably the largest privately owned collection of declassified information from the US government anywhere, and the entire archive is accessible for free. Not a direct answer to your question, but anything you want to know about stuff the US government was up to can be found buried in there, and he's taken the time to sort some of the more interesting stuff out to make browsing easier. Cheers. The creepiest fact is that even the most horrible declassified files are just small part of the documents that came to light. Too many facts went down the drain. The NSA and Catalog. Wikipedia. Wikins and Catalog. It contains a list of capabilities which the NSA and other national security administrations have been in possession of and use for the purpose of cyber surveillance. The document was created in 2008 and was made public in 2013. The technology in this document is incredible and terrifying for the idea of privacy. If you think they don't know everything, they do. These devices are everywhere, could be in any cable, any computer, any phone, anything. The Nanking Massacre photos. My grandpa Kawalker wrote a book about it, and it was too much for him. He killed himself. Almost every Chinese writer who wrote about the massacre have killed themselves. The WikiLeaks documents about PRISM and about the smart device hacking methods along with how to set devices into a false off mode. How about the film Aurelian? There was this user on 4chan called UTV who frequented the sports page and made lots of posts. Just normal posts too. Nothing controversial. Anyway, he had a stalker known as the Archiver who would follow and comment every single post of UTV. After a while UTV would get sick of these comments and he'd tell him to get lost, but the Archiver would just respond to them too. Eventually he started posting his own compilations of the interactions he had with UTV all over the sports page. His final post was him confessing that the people in his life found out about his obsession and he is now being monitored. But before he goes offline he wanted to share his film Aurelian, a 92-page document of everything he had ever made to do with UTV, and he requested that it be for UTV's eyes only. Of course that didn't stop people from opening it. Inside were post compilations of UTV's posts. Posts superimposed onto 3D models. Extensive poems and sonnets. A detailed description of how their life together would be and how UTV's funeral would pan out. I'm pretty sure there were real life details about UTV in there as well. Upon release of the document, UTV's only response was, and he contacted the police and went into hiding. Operation Snooze. Secret Cold War tests in St. Louis cause worry. Biological warfare testing done on US cities. Principally, the operation involved spraying large areas with zinc cadmium sulfide, which is very toxic. Many who were affected died of cancer and the testing was never followed up on. Most of the neighborhood's genetic makeup was dug up for no reason, and no apologies were made. The JFK assassination documents never fully being released as they keep getting pushed back. The documents themselves are creepy in the sense of how contradicting they are. But what makes it truly creepy is the full release keeps getting pushed back. Anything involving Japan's Unit 731 during WWII. It was a military chemical and biological warfare division that experimented on POWs. Operation Northwoods. Proposed false flag attacks against American civilian targets carried out by the CIA and blamed on Cuba in 1962. Thankfully JFK said duck no and shut that shit down. There is a list somewhere on web of the last words of inmates punished by death in Texas. Gay bomb. It was a weapon speculated by the USA in the 90s that, when dropped, would release pheromones which would make the enemy attracted to each other. Edit. Spelling. Cultura. The CIA performing illegal experiments on Americans to try to develop mind control. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was subjected to grueling degrading psychological experiments while he was an underage student at Harvard. The Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the African American community. I think there was a lot of creepy things that came out when the East German Stasi files were released after the Berlin Wall fell. All citizens were allowed to view their own files and many were shocked to find out that their own relatives were informing on them because they had no choice, and various other things. A good movie about this is called Other People's Lives as It. I got the name of the movie wrong. It's The Lives of Others. Operation Mockingbird. It was an operation to manipulate the media for propaganda purposes, but they ended it a long time ago. Honest. In late 2017, cables between the US Embassy in Jakarta and the State Department were declassified that casually tracked the massacres of the PKI that took place in Indonesia between 1965 and 1966. Other declassified documents also reveal that a US Embassy employee gave a list of suspected communists to the Indonesian army, and all 5,000 people on the list were rounded up and killed, with many tortured. In the end, between 500k and 3 million people were executed. The casual indifference to political genocide expressed by US government employees is chilling. Edit. Spelling. Edit 2. Word change for clarification. Edit 3. I was off by a couple months. There is a famous alien sighting history in a city called Varginha here in Brazil, and the city is mostly known for that particular incident in 1996. A couple of years ago, Brazil's National Archive made public documents that state UFO sightings from civilians and military that dates 25 years before the incident. My university has exchanged letters with Hitler about how they agree with Hitler about the use of eugenics. I believe the letters are in some of the archives in one of our libraries. The speech prepared for Nixon, if the moon landing had failed. Going from memory here, but I remember something along the lines of "the men who landed on the moon tonight will stay on the moon to rest in peace." Gave me all the chills. It may or may not be documented, but is still creepy knowing this. Back during the Cuban Missile Crisis, a U.S. Navy ship was sending depth charges towards a hidden Soviet submarine. The men in the submarine thought war had broken out, and a vote was held whether or not they should take down the ship with a nuclear torpedo. Two captains need to approve in order for the attack to happen. Both captains had approved, but a third man, Vasily Arkhipov, was given a vote as well. He voted no on the attack. Since the vote had to be unanimous, the attack was off the table. Creepy as duck when you realize how much power men have to be able to destroy the world. The Tuskegee study comes to mind. The study, which ran from 1932 to 1972 by the US Public Health Services, infected poor African Americans with syphilis to see how the disease naturally evolves. Those who took part in the study thought they were receiving free medical care. Get this, none of those who were infected were treated with penicillin despite its known effectiveness. The study stopped when a government employee blew the whistle. The Russian tsunami nuclear torpedo. They are still building them today. Not sure if it's actually creepy, but there are those can't remember which, documents about Hitler fleeing to South America, complete with a picture of someone who looks like him taken in Argentina, I believe dated to be 1954. There are documents from the CIA detailing experimentation with telekinesis and moving objects through solid glass. Wait till everything releases about MLK in 2027. Both his legacy and the government are going to take a hit. The Panama Papers. The reporter who broke the story ended up dead not long after it all went public. Get on Reddit to ask a cooking question, end up leaving traumatized. What about the Snowden leaks? I myself have no idea to this day exactly what he leaked, if it applies to this thread, nor how to find them. If anybody has some source on this, by all means link me. I've been curious for quite a while now. He basically leaked proof that the CIA and FBI is monitoring everything you do, from your search history to every photo you take, etc. This may not be such a surprise now, but it was during the scandal. Not exactly creepy, but you can find tons of letters and reports written by high-ranking government officials and people of that nature about UFOs, encounters, interest on UFOs, etc. Like real government documents, some partially redacted, where they're unironically discussing UFO phenomena. I remember reading one either to, or from an earlier U.S. president and another to or from Albert Einstein. To me it's one of the biggest and most fun and entertaining mysteries and conspiracies ever. There's something out there that would just blow our collective minds. Operation Buckshot Yankee View. S. A Department of Defense was infected by a worm that may or may not be from Russia. The military responses to the worst breach of U.S. military computers in history was Operation Buckshot Yankee. The military says that the operation was successful, but many believe the worm is still active to this day, stealing U.S. military secrets. If any of this teaches you anything, is that the government is constantly looking to duck you dry. Edit. This is why I don't understand why anyone would want the government to have more power. US banks like Chase Bank and Wells Fargo wanted to overthrow the US government. Their plan was to put in place a general after overthrowing the government. How would they have done it? They would have held the economy hostage by preventing any form of money coming out from bank accounts, thus no one can buy stuff and put money into the economy. The reason why it failed: the general they wanted reported them to the feds, and all people responsible were tried and arrested. So this one is weird. IDK if classified or deckless. Anyways, while in boot camp in the Navy, you have to do lots of computer work throughout. In Idaho, while snooping through the NKO page, I found a class named Plasma Weapon Familiarization Part. 2 inches it was restricted, so I couldn't check it out. I've always thought it was interesting. So in Sweden we have this law that basically says that all state documents is available for the public and includes all legal documents as crime scene pictures, autopsy reports and such. Back in 2008 there was a horrible crime where a jealous ex-girlfriend barged into her ex-boyfriend's home with a hammer and killed the new girlfriend and her 2 children, 1 and 3 years old. Normally they mask the pictures and the autopsy reports before they are made public when they involve kids or other sensitive content, but in this case the unmasked version leaked. So in 2008 the documents, complete with pictures, contained small children with their heads smashed with a hammer, their bloody house and such was released for the whole Swedish population. Those pictures is still easy available, even though the surviving mother and the stepfather, the boyfriend, pressed charges against the Swedish government as well as the Pirate Bay. The pictures and the interviews with the convicted murderer and the testimonies of the first responders is still haunting me. In France we had a pretty ducked up case. Maybe some of you know if, and if it's already been posted I'm sorry. It's called the Cursed Bread of Pont Saint-Esprit, literal traduction, where there was a mass food poisoning in the village of Pont Saint-Esprit. Many people fell sick during summer 1951, with ergotism symptoms, hallucinations, convulsions, psychosis, etc. Close bracket. French justice classified this as an ergotism epidemic, but they didn't detect any fungus causing the illness on rye and other imported cereals. For the context, France got out of the war and the agriculture had lots of difficult to rebuild itself, especially with the harsh climatic conditions during that period, so they imported cereals, though it can still be possible. There were 3 other hypotheses: panagen, fungicide, mycotoxins, and again, couldn't find a translation, but it's a whitening agent for the flour. But the 4th one, the second most possible with the ergotism one, is the spreading of LSD as a chemical weapon by the CIA, reminding that LSD is the artificial drug from ergot. Thus very similar symptoms. The only thing that can't be explained by this theory is why the only victims were the ones who bought their bread in a specific bakery. Hope I didn't forget or said anything wrong. If yes, please tell me. We studied it in high school, but it's almost 4 years ago. But IDK kinda haunts me. IDKY. I'd say the fact that the Panama Papers came out and then were swept under the rug were pretty crazy. IDK when that happened, but apparently very freshly after WW to the US CIA started an experiment where they gave hundreds of pregnant women radioactive fluids, promising them its medicine to ease the pain and smooth end delivery. Nearly every single woman suffered a miscarriage and some died themselves. I'll try to look it up to add a source. Edit. It was part of their MKUltra experiment, where they gave willing and uninformed subjects various toxic substances as a means to find out if mind control could be achieved.